Welcome to another biblically based look into today's news from Christian Voice New Zealand. Now here's Mike Bain.
Just when you thought it was safe to go outside without your tinfoil hat, madness has struck again. Now, I refuse to be a conspiracy what's-it, but the COVID-19 vaccinations and lockdowns are still with us. And remember, Jacinda's government still has the power to shut us down again. Now, let me start with vaccinations. Far from dying down, the issue of vaccination and blood use is still very much a hot issue around the world. Such cases as we've seen in New Zealand are increasing, and many people will soon be confronted with how they feel about the use of certain types of blood. Some individuals are already considering banking their own blood for future procedures. Just have a look at what's happened in our own country, New Zealand. Baby Will, as he's been identified, was born with a pulmonary valve stenosis, which is a hardening or narrowing of one of the valves in the heart that helps squirt blood to the lungs. Will's parents requested the hospital use only unvaxxed blood for the transfusion during the surgery. As we now know, the hospital refused the request despite the parents' efforts to have unvaccinated donors willing to give their blood for the baby's surgery. It went to court and Baby Will was forcibly removed from his parents and became a ward of the state. Then the surgery could go ahead with whatever blood the hospital chose. That's New Zealand. Meanwhile, overseas in the USA, we see the madness of the medical fraternity growing in boldness. Doctors there are appealing, well, that's not the right word, demanding that the campaign that they're running wants Congress to intervene with unvaccinated patients who need treatment. Now, the Association of the American Physicians and Surgeons is demanding that transplant centres be legally prohibited from treating an individual as ineligible to donate or receive an organ, or assign a lower priority to an individual wanting to receive an organ if that individual has declined to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. The Republican senator promoting the legislation said his proposal to do just that is in response to several reports from across the United States of individuals being removed from the organ transplant list or moved to inactive status as a result of being unvaccinated. Here is what I call the Reader's Digest version of what is happening in the USA. For example, the life of a 14-year-old girl who needs a life-saving kidney transplant has been refused medical care by the Duke University Hospital because, why? She's unvaccinated. Another report mentions the case of a Boston man who needed a heart transplant, but since he's not been vaccinated against COVID-19, he's been removed from the transplant list at the Boston Hospital. Officials at health organisations in the leftist state of Colorado took an especially harsh course. They told a woman with polycystic kidney disease she has been kicked off the list to receive a transplant because she too hadn't got the COVID vaccine. Another Colorado woman, despite having stage 5 kidney disease, found out a hospital won't approve her kidney transplant surgery until she's got the COVID-19 vaccine. In Alberta, Canada, the courts ruled that a woman's rights weren't violated when she was denied an organ transplant due to not being vaccinated against the Wuhan coronavirus. Now, closer to home, the entire health system in Queensland announced those not vaccinated won't get potentially life-saving treatments there either. Now, the New Zealand case raises lots of questions. First, the parents of Will were trying to do what they believed to be correct and wanting unvaccinated blood. Note, there was no suggestion they didn't want the surgery. 2. Amidst the media frenzy when politicians are calling for parental responsibility for their children, Will's mum and dad were taking responsibility for his health and his well-being. 3. Why is it okay in this country a woman can have her preborn child killed by an act of abortion and older people can decide when they'll die and the medical profession are okay with this double standard? 4. The intervention by the courts in this country are used by the medical fraternity more often or not. But we live in a free country where we should have the right to decide, and that goes for people like Jehovah's Witnesses, whether you agree with them or not. Like Will's parents, they want their children to live, have the operation. And like Will's parents, they're entitled to say what is best for their child's well-being following surgery. As I said, you can agree or disagree. It's a free country at the moment. On to the next piece of insanity. This time not from America, but the UK. I suppose that we should have known that this was inevitable. After establishing a precedent during the pandemic, now the elite apparently intend to impose lockdowns for other reasons. Now, what I'm about to tell you is extremely alarming, and I hope that you'll share this with everyone that's on your network. Climate change lockdowns are here, and if people don't respond very strongly to this, it's likely that we'll soon see similar measures implemented all over the Western world. The elite have always promised to do whatever it takes to fight climate change, and now we're finding out that they weren't kidding. Over in the UK, residents of Oxfordshire will now need a special permit to go from one zone of the city to another. But even if you have the permit, you're still only going to be allowed to go from one zone to another a maximum of 100 days per year. Now, under the new scheme, if residents want to leave their zone, they're going to need permission from the council, who then gets to decide who's worthy of freedom and who isn't. Under the new scheme, residents will be allowed to leave their zone, a maximum, as we said, of 100 times per year. But to even gain this, every resident has to register their car details with the council, who will then track their movements via smart cameras around the city. Yeah, I never thought that we'd see this sort of insanity implemented in the Western world, but here we are. Of course, there are a few people that are loudly objecting to this new plan, but one Oxfordshire official is pledging that the controversial plan would go ahead whether people like it or not. This sounds very similar to a plan being implemented by the Australian Commonwealth Bank, the CBA, which has partnered with a carbon management solutions company to implement a new feature which links purchases to a customer's carbon footprint and warns them when they're going over the average. The bank gives the customer the option to pay a fee to offset their carbon footprint. Now remember, almost all of the banks operating in New Zealand are Australian owned. Now, to keep emissions down, for example, in France, the government is banning short-haul flights if a destination can be reached by train within 2.5 hours. Farmers in the Netherlands are being offered well over the worth of their farm to sell it to the government. They're being asked to take up the offer voluntarily. But the Telegraph newspaper reports the country is attempting to reduce its nitrogen pollution and will make the purchases if not enough farmers accept the buyouts. Just watch out for that happening in New Zealand. Now, Canada has found a way to get people to stop emitting any carbon at all once the usefulness is over. Assisted suicide has become quite popular amongst the Canadians, and the number of people choosing that option keeps setting new records year after year. Last year, more than 10,000 people in Canada, that's astonishing, isn't it? That's over 3% of all deaths there, ended their lives via euthanasia, an increase of 1/3 on the previous year. And it's likely to keep rising. Next year, Canada is set to allow people to die exclusively for mental health reasons. Medical assistance in dying sounds so clinical, but ultimately it is the greatest lockdown of all, because once you stop breathing, you won't be able to commit any more climate sins. Now, all over the Western world, authoritarianism is growing at a pace that is breathtaking. If they can severely restrict travel and shut down farms today, what sort of tyranny will we see in the future? Sadly, most people in the general population still don't understand what's happening. Hopefully, they're going to wake up before it's too late.
Thank you for watching. Help us to spread this message by sharing it with your own network. If you want to see more messages like this one, simply hit the subscribe button. For more information about our work, or if you're moved to donate, jump online to our website, christianvoicenewzealand.com.